Both Kenya and Uganda are East African countries which share the same border. Kenya and Uganda share the mighty Lake Victoria. If you're going to Kenya, you have to cross via Malaba, Busia, Swamboda, and others. So, which means we are on the same line. Uganda and Kenya, we are both colonized by British, and one gained her independence in 1962, that is Uganda, whereas Kenya had to gain her independence in 1963. Uganda uses English as the national language, the same in Kenya, English. However, the differentiate is between Swahili being the most dominant local language in Kenya and Luganda dominating Uganda. Are you getting my point? Kenya is currently led by a young, vibrant president known as William Samoei Ruto, whereas Uganda, under the leadership of Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, who has been there for now 36 years. Wow. That's the difference. One is a young, vibrant president. Another one is an old-aged president. The crested crane is the national symbol of Uganda. Crested cranes are very peaceful, but in the wilderness. Whereas a lion, the king of the jungle, represents Kenya as their national animal on their flag. Black, yellow, red representing Uganda's national flag, whereas black, white stripes and green representing the Kenyan side. Geographically, Kenya is bigger than Uganda with 582 square kilometers and Uganda having only 200,000 square kilometers. This means that Kenya is 2 times 1.93% water space represents the Kenyan land, whereas 15% water is occupied in the Ugandan side. This means that the water space occupied in Uganda is bigger than that one occupied in Kenya. Kenya is occupied with a very long coastline running over 530 kilometers with various ports named Mombasa, Malindi, and others, whereas Uganda is a landlocked country which depends on Kenya as far as issues concerning trade. So Kenya is a bit ahead of us on that one. They were naturally endowed by the coastline at the Indian Ocean. Kenya is represented by 47 counties and Nairobi being the most famous, whereas Uganda is represented by districts, over 131 districts, and the most popular known as Kampala district in Uganda. That's a difference. One is having counties, for us we're having districts. Oh my goodness. Both countries are geographically endowed by tall mountains, Kenya being represented by Mount Kenya, while Uganda's tallest peak is Mountain Rwenzori. Kenya's population is bigger than that one of Uganda with 53 million people, whereas Uganda's population is at 45 million people, which means that Kenya still leads in the size of people. This means that Kenya is ranked 26th in the whole world and Uganda ranked 30th in terms of population. Kenya is represented by 4 big main cities Nairobi, Eldoret, Nakuru, and Mombasa. These are well-developed cities, while Uganda is represented by 7 quietly developed cities, that is Kampala, Mbale, Port Potro, Barara, Arua, Gulu, and Jinja. You cannot compare these cities to those ones of Kenya. Realistically, Kenya's cities are more developed and very big in size. Both countries, Kenya and Uganda, are dominated by Christianity, being at 85% in Kenya and 84% in Uganda. This is a similarity. In both countries, women or females dominate the population at 50.1%, which means that both in Kenya and Uganda, women are having a bigger number, and this is a similarity since we are neighbors. The Kenyan median age is at 19 averagely, and Uganda's median age is at 15 years averagely. This means that Kenyans are older averagely than Ugandans. Ugandans are having a higher number of a very young population. Kenya is considered as East Africa's primary industrial center with around 225 US billion dollar GDP and considered fourth biggest economy in Africa, whereas Uganda is having 52.4 US billion dollar GDP and considered 13th in Africa. This automatically implies that industry-wise, Kenya is leading Uganda. Kenya's GDP per capita is at 2,800 US dollar. Wow. Whereas Uganda's GDP is a bit lower at 1,130 US GDP per capita. Still, Kenya economically beats up Uganda. Wow. 4.28 of Uganda's population are unemployed, while 5.5 population rate in Kenya is unemployed, which means that the numbers of unemployed people in Kenya are higher than those ones in Uganda. Maybe this is because even their population is higher than ours. But both Kenya and Uganda are members of the East African community. Manu Chandaria is Kenya's richest person with 2.5 US billion dollar net worth, and he is the owner of Comcraft Group. Whereas Sudil Dupareria is the richest person in Uganda with 1.2 US billion dollar, and he is the owner of the Ruparelia Group in Uganda. Military-wise, Kenya has 50,000 active military personnel with 22,000 reserve forces ready to battle, whereas Uganda is having 45,000 military active personnel with a reserve of 10,000. In total, Kenya beats up Uganda with 77 active military personnel ready for the battlefront, while Uganda is having 55,000 active military personnel. This means on the battlefront, Kenya beats up Uganda. Still, Kenya spends lots of money, around 2.2 US billion dollars on her security, of which Uganda spends around 0.92 billion, less than a billion to our security. Automatically, Kenya beats up the high budget of security in East Africa. On that side of military, still Kenya stands at 12th military rankings in Africa, while Uganda we are standing at 22nd, which means that Kenya still beats us in that side of fighting. One day, soccer is the most popular game in both countries, and they both joined hands, soon hosting the Africa Cup of Nations coming in 2027 under the Pamoja bid with our neighbor Tanzania. This means that both countries have managed to put out and produce good talents for soccer as a game. Still in sports, Kenya has 113 Olympic medals, while Uganda, wow, this is 10 times bigger than Uganda. Kenyatta International Airport is the biggest and the busiest airport in Kenya, handling over 10 million passengers in 2023, whereas Entebbe International Airport near Kampala in Uganda is the biggest and the busiest. It handled only 1.9 million passengers. This means that Kenya beats us even in tourism and visitors who visit their Kenya. Uganda's most famous landmark in the world is the River Nile, while Kenya's most famous landmark is known as the Masai Mara. Don't forget that River Nile is the longest river in the whole world. That is from Uganda. While Masai Mara comprises of one of the biggest national parks in East Africa. Lupita Nyong'o is the most followed Kenyan on Instagram with around 11 million followers, whereas Zari Hassan, the boss lady, is the most famous and followed Ugandan on Instagram with 12 million followers. This means that we beat them up. On YouTube, Kenya's Citizen TV is the most followed with 4.7 million followers, while Rico Animations is the most followed YouTuber in Uganda with 8.8 million followers. Hope you got to understand something about this video. We are doing them out of love, nothing much, and educative purposes. Keep subscribing, keep following me, keep supporting my channel. My name is Emmanuel.